Grand Admiral Kthar stood imperiously on the command deck of the Xylar flagship Eternal Dominance, his six-digit hands clasped behind his back as he gazed upon the holographic displays showing the burning human colonies. The orange and red flames danced in the reflective surface of his silver-blue scales, giving his already intimidating visage an almost demonic quality. "Magnificent, isn't it, Admiral Zrel?" Kthar asked, gesturing to the largest display showing the devastation of Kepler 186 FB, the most populous of the targeted human settlements. How efficiently our warriors delivered this necessary lesson. Admiral Zrel, smaller in stature but no less devoted to the Empire, nodded sharply. The operation proceeded with precision, Grand Admiral. All primary targets neutralized within 4.7 standard units. The human defense capabilities were negligible. Around them, the command crew of the Eternal Dominance continued their duties with disciplined efficiency, though many couldn't help stealing glances at the spectacular destruction displayed before them. The Xylar Empire had existed for over 12 millennia, expanding methodically across the stars. Their technological superiority and rigid social hierarchy had served them well, allowing them to either subjugate or eliminate any species foolish enough to challenge their manifest destiny of galactic dominance. Humans were simply the latest upstart species to require correction. Strategic Analyst Lyra, Kthar called without turning from the displays. "Your assessment of the operation?" Lyra stepped forward, her scales a paler blue than most Xylar, her posture perfect as military protocol demanded. "The simultaneous strikes on Kepler 186 FB, TRAPPIST 1E Colony, Alpha Centauri Hub, and the Proxima mining facility have resulted in estimated human casualties of 378,421. Civilian infrastructure destruction at 97.8%. Military capabilities reduced to approximately 3.2% of previous operational capacity in these regions." "Excellent," Kthar rumbled. "The vermin have been exterminated from our rightful territories." Zrel tapped a control panel, bringing up a strategic map of the sector. The human expansion into these regions was becoming inconvenient. This demonstration of Xylar might will ensure they understand their proper place in the galactic order. Lyra hesitated, her claws tapping softly on her datapad. "Grand Admiral, if I may, there is something unusual about the human response." Kthar finally turned from the displays, his slitted pupils narrowing. "Explain." "There are no emergency communications, sir. No distress calls. No diplomatic outreach on open channels. No detected military movement from their known vessels." Lyra brought up a secondary display showing communication bandwidth analyses. "It's as if their entire command structure has gone silent." Zrel dismissed this with a wave. "Obviously, they are paralyzed with fear. Their primitive leadership is likely still processing the reality of our power." "Perhaps," Lyra continued, her voice carefully modulated to remain respectful. "But our intelligence suggested they would at minimum attempt to evacuate survivors or dispatch aid vessels. Their 17 known military craft remain in exactly the same positions as before our attack." Kthar laughed, the sound reverberating through the command deck. "You worry too much, analyst. This is the typical response of a lesser species confronted with its own insignificance. They hide, they cower. Soon they will beg." "Of course, Grand Admiral," Lyra responded, bowing slightly. But as she returned to her station, she couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that the silence was too complete, too perfect. Every species, no matter how primitive, responded to existential threats with some form of chaos. Panic communications, desperate pleas, hasty military repositioning. The humans had done none of these things. It was as if they were simply waiting. 3 days passed since the successful bombardment of the human colonies. On the Eternal Dominance, the initial celebration had given way to routine, though the atmosphere remained buoyant with victory. Kthar had already filed his formal report to the Imperial Council, claiming another successful pacification operation against an encroaching lesser species. Still nothing? Zrel asked as he approached Lyra's station. The Admiral had developed a habit of checking on the status of human communications several times daily, though he maintained it was merely to confirm their continued submission. No, Admiral, Lyra replied, displaying the latest scans. No official communications from Earth governance or their remaining colonies. Their known military vessels maintain standard patrol patterns. No detected movement toward our borders or the affected colonies. Zrel's mandibles clicked in irritation. It's been 3 days. They should have at least attempted to recover their dead by now. Perhaps they fear a second attack, Lyra suggested. As they should, Zrel replied automatically, but his typically confident demeanor had acquired a subtle edge of discomfort. The Grand Admiral wishes to be informed immediately if their behavior changes. After Zrel departed, Lyra continued poring over sensor data, looking for anything that might explain the unnatural silence. The humans' lack of response defied all behavioral models. No diplomatic outreach, no military posturing, not even commercial vessels diverted to provide aid. Commander Vex, she called to a nearby officer. Has there been any unusual activity in the Sol system itself? Vex shook his head. Nothing detected by our long-range sensors. Earth continues normal broadcast patterns. Their orbital stations show typical energy signatures. Their lunar base remains operational. What about their military vessels? All 17 craft remain in their established patrol zones. Some around Earth, others near their Mars and Jupiter colonies. Vex paused. Although, what is it? Lyra pressed. It's probably nothing. A calibration issue with the quantum sensors. They've been showing micro-fluctuations in energy readings near the asteroid belt and some of Jupiter's moons, but all within acceptable parameters for solar interference. Lyra made a note. Something still felt wrong, but she had no concrete evidence to bring to the Grand Admiral. Only her instinct, which counted for little in the rigid Xylar command structure. Later that day, as the command crew was rotating shifts, the communications officer's console lit up unexpectedly. Grand Admiral, the officer called out, drawing Kthar's immediate attention. We're receiving a transmission. It's directed specifically to you, sir. Kthar moved to the communications station. Source? Unknown, sir. The signal isn't coming through any known relay. The encryption is unlike anything I've seen. A desperate human plea for mercy, no doubt, Kthar said with satisfaction. Route it to my private terminal. Sir, the officer hesitated. The encryption is extremely sophisticated. It will take time to, then get our best cryptologists on it immediately. Kthar snapped. Hours later, the ship's cryptologists had managed to decode only portions of the message. What they had extracted was a short audio file, which Kthar ordered played on the command deck. The voice that emerged from the speakers was neither male nor female, with no discernible accent or emotional inflection. Most disturbingly, it spoke in perfect Imperial Xylar, a language few non-Xylar species had ever mastered. Asterisk, you bombed human colonies? Congratulations, you just awakened the dragons. Asterisk. Silence fell over the command deck. Then Kthar laughed, the sound too loud, too forced. Is this the best they can muster? Cryptic threats referencing their own mythology. He turned to Lyra. What is this dragon they speak of? Lyra had already begun searching the ship's database on human cultural references. Dragons are mythological creatures in many Earth cultures, Grand Admiral. Generally depicted as large reptilian beings, often winged, capable of breathing fire. They symbolize both destruction and protection in their folklore. They're often portrayed as the most powerful beings in their stories, capable of devastating entire armies. Zrel snorted derisively. How fitting that the monkeys would invoke imaginary reptiles to frighten us. Find the source of this message, Kthar ordered, and prepare a response, making it clear that any further human aggression will result in strikes against their core worlds, not just outlying colonies. As the command crew rushed to comply, Lyra continued examining data about human myths and legends. The reference to dragons being awakened suggested something that had been dormant, hidden. It wasn't the typical response of a defeated species begging for mercy or a defiant one threatening conventional retaliation. The next day brought more unsettling news. Two Xylar scout ships patrolling the edge of the Sol system had gone silent. Initial reports suggested equipment malfunction, but Lyra noticed a pattern forming. "Grand Admiral," she finally said, requesting a private audience with Kthar and Zrel. "I believe we may be missing something crucial in our understanding of human capabilities." Kthar looked annoyed at the interruption. "Speak plainly, analyst." The silence after our attack. The cryptic message. Now our missing scout ships. Additionally, our listening post near Jupiter reported seeing large dark shadows before going offline. Lyra displayed a chart showing the locations and times of these anomalies. These events form a pattern consistent with coordinated counter-surveillance. Zrel dismissed this with a wave. Coincidence and paranoia. The humans have 17 obsolete military vessels. Our intelligence is thorough. What if our intelligence is incomplete? Lyra pressed. The only data we have on human military capabilities comes from their public broadcasts and what they've shown other species. Kthar's expression darkened. You suggest they have hidden their true capabilities? From everyone? For what purpose? I don't know, Lyra admitted. But these energy fluctuations our sensors have detected in the asteroid belt and near Jupiter's moons. They're too regular to be natural phenomena. Enough, Kthar said. Your concerns are noted, analyst Lyra, but they amount to speculation. The humans are primitive, disorganized, and now properly chastised. Lyra bowed and withdrew, but the sense of impending danger only grew stronger. 5 days after the assault on the human colonies, Kthar summoned his command staff. Rumors had been spreading throughout the fleet about the strange silence from the humans and the missing scout ships. To quell this unrest and confirm the humans' cowardice, as Admiral Zrel put it, Kthar had made a decision. "We will dispatch Task Force Dominion to the Sol system," he announced. "Commander Nock will lead 15 of our finest vessels on a show of force. They will enter the system, conduct comprehensive scans of all human military installations, and demonstrate our continued resolve." Commander Nock, a decorated veteran of 3 pacification campaigns, stood proudly as he accepted the assignment. "We shall show these humans the full might of the Xylar Empire, Grand Admiral." "Remember," Kthar added, "this is primarily an intelligence-gathering mission. Engage only if provoked, but if engaged, respond with overwhelming force." Lyra was assigned to monitor the operation remotely, analyzing data feeds in real time. As Task Force Dominion departed, she tried once more to voice her concerns to Zrel. "Admiral, perhaps we should wait until we better understand." "Your caution borders on insubordination, analyst," Zrel cut her off. "Commander Nock has 15 of our most advanced warships. The humans have 17 outdated vessels. The mathematics of superiority is clear." Task Force Dominion approached the Sol system 2 days later, its formation impeccable as they prepared to cross into the heliosphere. Commander Nock's confidence was evident in every transmission back to the Eternal Dominance. Entering the outer Sol system now, Nock reported, no sign of human patrols or defensive measures. As the task force moved deeper into the system, past the orbit of Neptune, something strange began to happen. The civilian communications networks around Earth, Mars, and the other human settlements suddenly went silent. Satellites stopped transmitting. Space stations powered down. Curious, Nock noted. It appears they are attempting to hide by shutting down their systems. Primitive strategy. But Lyra, monitoring from the flagship, noticed something else. "Commander Nock, our sensors are detecting massive energy signatures emerging from the asteroid belt and Jupiter's moons." "Specify," Nock ordered. Before Lyra could respond, Nock's second-in-command interrupted. "Commander, multiple structures appearing. They were hidden somehow." The task force's sensors began transmitting images that left the Xylar command staff speechless. Enormous construction facilities were emerging from within hollowed-out asteroids. Defensive platforms larger than anything in the Xylar arsenal were rising from beneath the surfaces of several Jovian moons. And on Earth's moon, what had appeared to be a simple scientific outpost was transforming, segments of the lunar surface retracting to reveal a massive installation. "Impossible," whispered Zrel, watching over Lyra's shoulder. "Our intelligence was exactly what they wanted us to see," Lyra finished. On the main display, new objects began appearing on sensors. They emerged from the hidden facilities and from the depths of space itself, moving with impossible speed and precision. "Grand Admiral," Nak's voice came through, tension evident despite the signal degradation. "We are detecting multiple vessels. Configuration unknown. They match no known human designs." The sensor feeds showed them massive ships with sleek, predatory silhouettes. Their dark surfaces absorbed sensor scans rather than reflecting them, making exact measurements difficult. But one thing was clear: they were enormous, dwarfing even the largest Xylar dreadnoughts. "Their shape," Lyra said quietly. "They resemble dragons," Thar finished, recalling the mythological creatures from Lyra's earlier briefing. Nak's voice came through again. "The vessels are approaching. We are attempting communication on all frequencies." No response. Requesting instructions. Thar hesitated only briefly. "Maintain position. Do not fire unless fired upon." Moments passed in tense silence. Then Nak's voice, higher with stress. "They're surrounding us." Still no response to communications. Their weapons systems appear to be... "Grand Admiral, these energy readings can't be correct. Nothing could generate that kind of power without..." "Commander Nak," Thar interrupted. "Do what you must to protect your ships." What followed was captured in fragmented sensor data and broken transmissions. The Xylar task force opened fire first, energy weapons lancing out toward the nearest dragon ships. The beams simply vanished, absorbed by the dark hulls without apparent effect. The dragon ship's response was swift and devastating. They didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, waves of concentrated plasma, precisely controlled gravitational distortions, and exotic energy patterns that Xylar sensors couldn't even classify engulfed the task force. 3 Xylar ships were simply gone in the first exchange. 4 more followed seconds later. The rest attempted evasive maneuvers, but the dragon ships moved with impossible agility for their size, predicting and countering every tactic. Commander Nak's final transmission came through garbled, overwhelming, "Can't penetrate there. Some kind of energy absorbing, trying to retreat, but they've never seen anything like." Then silence. On the command deck of the Eternal Dominance, no one spoke. The tactical display told the story clearly enough. 15 advanced Xylar warships, gone in less than 3 minutes. Thar stared at the display, his composure finally cracking. What were we facing? Lyra had no answer. None of them did. The destruction of Task Force Dominion sent shockwaves through the Xylar fleet. Within hours, the command structure had split into factions. Admiral Zrel led those who insisted on an immediate, all-out attack with the entire Central War fleet, hundreds of the most powerful Xylar vessels, arguing that only overwhelming force could overcome this unexpected human weapon. "They caught Nak by surprise with these dragon ships," Zrel argued before the War Council. "But now we know they exist. We can adapt our tactics, adjust our weapons. Our empire has faced technological surprises before and prevailed through superior numbers and Xylar courage." Lyra, now supported by a growing faction of more cautious officers, advocated for restraint. Commander Nak had no effect on these vessels. None. Their defensive capabilities absorbed our most powerful weapons without damage. We need to reassess, perhaps open diplomatic channels. Diplomacy? Zrel scoffed. After they destroyed 15 of our ships? After they hid their true nature from the galaxy? The humans have revealed themselves as deceptive and dangerous. They must be eliminated before they can use these weapons against our homeworlds. Thar, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during the debate, finally spoke. "Admiral Zrel is right. The humans have revealed their treachery. By hiding these capabilities, they have proven themselves unworthy of diplomatic consideration. We will mobilize the Central War Fleet immediately. Lyra tried once more. Grand Admiral, please. We don't understand what we're facing. These ships, their technology, it's beyond anything we've encountered. At least allow more time for analysis. Your concern is noted, Analyst Lyra, Kthar said coldly. But your repeated advocacy for caution borders on sympathy for our enemy. You will be confined to your quarters until the operation is complete. As Lyra was escorted from the War Council, she caught the eye of several officers who shared her concerns but lacked the courage to speak up. She knew then that pride and fear of appearing weak, fear of admitting error, would drive the Empire to potential disaster. Over the next 2 days, the Central War Fleet assembled 323 capital ships, including dreadnoughts, carriers, and battlecruisers, accompanied by over 1,800 support and attack craft. It was the largest concentration of Xylar military power seen in generations, a force that had subjugated dozens of species and hundreds of worlds. From her confined quarters, Lyra could only watch through limited data feeds as the Armada prepared to enter the Sol system. She had been granted this small concession by officers sympathetic to her position, though they dared not openly defy Kthar. The Xylar Central War Fleet entered the Sol system in battle formation, weapons charged, shields at maximum. Kthar himself led from the Eternal Dominance, with Zrel commanding the flanking assault group. All ships advance to designated coordinates, Kthar ordered. Maintain formation integrity and prepare for encounter resistance. As the fleet approached the orbit of Neptune, the same eerie pattern repeated. Human communications throughout the system fell silent. Satellites and stations went dark. They're trying to hide again, Zrel commented. Pointless. But Kthar wasn't so confident now. Deploy. Reconnaissance drones. Full sensor sweep. I want those Dragon ships located before they can position for ambush. The drones raced ahead of the fleet, their sensitive instruments searching for any sign of the mysterious vessels. They didn't have to search long. Grand Admiral, the sensor officer reported, voice tense. Multiple contacts emerging throughout the system. They're everywhere, sir. The tactical display updated, showing not dozens but hundreds of the Dragon ships appearing from hidden positions within the asteroid belt, from behind moons and planets, even from what appeared to be concealed positions in empty space, some kind of advanced cloaking technology. How many? Kthar demanded. Still counting, sir. At least 500 major vessels, and thousands of smaller craft. The command deck fell silent. The Xylar fleet, the pride of the Empire, was outnumbered. Impossible, Zrel whispered. Our intelligence indicated. Their intelligence operation was better than ours, Kthar interrupted. They showed us exactly what they wanted us to see. The Dragon ships moved with the same coordinated precision witnessed during the destruction of Task Force Dominion, forming an elaborate three-dimensional pattern that began to envelop the Xylar fleet. All ships battle positions. Kthar ordered. Concentrate fire on the nearest targets. Find a weakness. The Xylar fleet opened fire, thousands of energy weapons and projectiles streaking toward the Dragon ships. As before, most seemed to simply disappear upon contact with the dark hulls. A few of the smaller Dragon vessels showed minimal damage, but quickly withdrew behind larger ships. Then the Dragon fleet responded. It wasn't just a battle. It was systematic dismantling. The Dragon ships isolated Xylar vessel clusters with precise formation flying, then disabled or destroyed them with weapons that seemed to bypass shields entirely. Some fired concentrated plasma streams that cut through Xylar hulls like paper. Others generated localized gravitational distortions that crushed vessels from within. Still others deployed swarms of smaller craft, wyverns, one officer called them, that attached themselves to Xylar ships and somehow drained their power before detaching and moving to new targets. Kthar watched in horror as his mighty fleet disintegrated around him. Ships that had survived dozens of campaigns were reduced to drifting hulks or expanding clouds of debris in minutes. Seasoned commanders, whose tactics had conquered worlds, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Retreat, Thar finally ordered, his voice hollow. All ships, emergency FTL jumps to rally point Omega. But even retreat proved difficult. The Dragon ships had somehow seeded the space around the Xylar fleet with FTL inhibitors, forcing the surviving ships to fight their way to clean space before they could escape. In the midst of this chaos, Thar's communications officer reported, "Grand Admiral, we're receiving a direct transmission. It's specifically for you, sir." "Put it through," Thar said, beyond caring about protocol. The main display shifted to show a dimly lit command center. The figure seated centrally was human in form, but obscured by shadow. When they spoke, it was with the same neutral voice from the earlier message. "Grand Admiral Thar of the Xylar Empire. This slaughter can end now, on my order. Do you wish to discuss terms?" Thar, his pride in tatters, but his wits returning, responded carefully. "You have the advantage at present. I will hear your terms. First, I believe you deserve an explanation," the shadowed figure said. "What you see before you is not the human fleet. It is the Dragon fleet. TDF, Terran Defense Force. We do not belong to the human government, you know. We operate independently, with a single mandate: ensure that humanity never again experiences the kind of devastation it has known throughout its history." "You claim to be separate from Earth governance?" Thar asked, buying time as the remnants of his fleet continued their retreat. "We were established centuries ago, in secret, by a consortium of visionaries who recognized that official human institutions were too transparent, too constrained by politics, to provide true security. We built our bases in secret, developed our technology away from prying eyes, created a force powerful enough to deter any threat, but one that would remain dormant unless truly needed. Until we awakened the dragons," Thar quoted bitterly. "Precisely. You attacked peaceful colonies, killed hundreds of thousands of civilians. You did so believing humans were weak, disorganized, and technologically inferior." The figure leaned forward slightly, though their features remained indistinct. "That was your mistake. Not the attack itself, but your failure to conceive that a species might hide its true capabilities, that a prey animal might disguise itself as bait, only to reveal the trap when the predator commits." Around the eternal dominance, the battle continued to rage. Nearly 70% of the Xylar fleet had been destroyed or disabled, while the Dragon ships appeared largely untouched. "Your terms," Thar prompted, his voice tight. "Immediate cessation of hostilities. Full recognition of human sovereignty over all currently claimed territories. A permanent non-aggression pact. Substantial reparations for the colonies you destroyed." The figure paused. "And a demilitarized zone along our borders, monitored by automated beacons that will alert us to any Xylar military movement. And in return, we do not demand your territory. We do not demand your technology. We do not demand political submission or cultural change. We do not even demand punishment for those who ordered the attack." The figure's tone remained eerily calm. "We are not conquerors, Thar. We are guardians. Once you no longer threaten what we protect, we have no quarrel with you." Thar's mind raced. The terms were surprisingly lenient, given the Xylar Empire's total military failure. "I will need to consult with the Imperial Council. Of course, you have 6 hours. During that time, we will cease offensive operations against your retreating vessels." The figure made a small gesture, and the transmission ended. In the aftermath, as the surviving Xylar ships regrouped at the rally point, the full scale of the defeat became clear. Of the 323 capital ships that had entered the Sol system, only 98 had escaped. Admiral Zrel was among the casualties, his flagship destroyed in the initial exchange. The Imperial Council, faced with sensor logs of the battle and the Dragon ship's overwhelming technological superiority, had little choice. They accepted the terms, though many counselors raged against the humiliation privately. Lyra, released from confinement, found herself unexpectedly appointed as liaison to the humans for the peace negotiations. Her caution, once dismissed as cowardice, was now recognized as wisdom. 6 months later, Lyra stood on the observation deck of a diplomatic vessel approaching Earth, the first official Xylar delegation to the human homeworld. The Xylar Empire was still reeling from the defeat. The loss of so many ships and experienced officers had created a power vacuum that new leadership was struggling to fill. Cathar had resigned in disgrace, the tradition of honorable withdrawal the only thing preserving him from more severe consequences. The Imperial Council, once unified in its belief in Xylar supremacy, now debated fundamental reforms. Some argued for greater openness to other species, others for isolation and rebuilding, but none advocated for renewed aggression against humans. As Earth grew larger in the viewport, Lyra reflected on what they had learned during the negotiations. The humans, the public-facing, diplomatic humans, had been as surprised by the Dragon Fleet's emergence as the Xylar. The Terran Defense Force had indeed operated independently for centuries, hidden from human governments as well as alien species. We suspected something, a human diplomat had confided to Lyra during one session. Unexplained budget allocations. Certain restricted regions in the asteroid belt and outer planets. Occasional sightings that were quickly classified, but most of us thought it was just normal military secrecy, not this. The Dragon Fleet itself remained mysterious. After the battle, it had withdrawn to its hidden bases, maintaining only enough visible presence to monitor the demilitarized zone. Its commanders rarely communicated directly, preferring to work through intermediaries. The shadowed figure who had spoken to Cathar, apparently called Director, though no name was ever given, had not appeared again. What was clear, however, was that humans had developed a dual approach to galactic relations. Their public face was open, diplomatic, and seemingly transparent, revealing enough genuine aspects of their society and technology to appear honest. Meanwhile, the Dragon Fleet remained hidden, developing technologies far beyond what humans shared with other species, ready to emerge when truly threatened. "We're approaching the diplomatic center," the pilot announced, interrupting Lyra's thoughts. As the vessel began its landing sequence, Lyra observed the human city below. It appeared peaceful, ordinary, like countless other developed worlds. Nothing in its appearance suggested a species capable of creating the Dragon Fleet. That was the lesson the Xylar had learned at terrible cost. Appearances could be deceiving. Strength did not always announce itself with displays of power. Sometimes the most dangerous guardian was the one you never saw until it was too late. The ship touched down on the landing pad. Lyra straightened her diplomatic robes and prepared to face the humans not as inferior beings to be subjugated, but as equals, perhaps even superiors in some respects, to be understood and respected. Behind her, a junior aide who had survived the battle whispered, "Do you think they're watching us even now? The dragons?" Lyra glanced at the clear blue Earth sky. "I'm certain of it." As they disembarked and were greeted by human officials, Lyra caught a glimpse of an insignia on a security officer's inner collar, a stylized dragon, barely visible unless one knew to look for it. The officer met her gaze briefly, nodded almost imperceptibly, then resumed his professional stance. The message was clear. The dragons had returned to the shadows, but they remained vigilant, ready to awaken again should the need arise. The Xylar Empire had learned its lesson. One could only hope other species would be wise enough to learn from their mistake rather than repeat it.